All right, metas, it's the time we all been waiting for. The first season has ended. So many questions that many of us have about how Eternal Land works, how seasons are going to work, how transferring items between seasons is going to work is now upon us. And I have put together, help with some good friends of mine, a nice little list of about 20 or so tips and tricks and things I wish I knew before I server transferred. Hopefully some of these are going to help you guys out. We're going to run through a decent chunk of these one at a time, and we'll expand on some of these at where necessary, and hopefully it'll give you guys that much more prepped, especially because I know some of you guys are currently in a holding pattern waiting for more servers to open, or maybe you're trying to get to hard mode or something like that and you didn't get in yet and all that kind of stuff. Hopefully I can catch you guys before you make your full transfer and help you make some of these early decisions to help you out before you transfer. And with that, let's dive into it. So the first thing I want to cover is to use all your currencies that you require that are part of the season, such as your stellar planulas. You could use your Mitsuko marks, things like that. Though I have been able to confirm that this, at least for the current season, this seasonal shop with the Mitsuko marks and these little emissary crates and stuff like that, these are going to be the same on the new server. So if you didn't get some cosmetic or something you wanted out of here and you have some Mitsuko marks left over, this box will be the same on the new server. I assume they will come out with different variations on this in the future, but for now this is going to be the same. So don't worry about that necessarily, but you can spin them if you want. Before you head over, you are going to have, of course, your opportunity to, you know, go through all your seasonal stuff again and get more Mitsuko marks all over again, I'm sure. But go ahead and jump around to all your settlements and stuff like that. Jump over to Blackfell, talk to the planula guy, go ahead and spin those to unlock accessories or stuff like that before you go. You know, just sort of set yourself up for success on the next server. Go ahead and use up those currencies. Next thing I'm going to recommend is to also empty out all the settlement shops. So come into the settlement shops, buy up all the blueprints, the items, the accessories, all that stuff that you may want to bring over with you, especially since those blueprints and stuff will follow you over to the new server. They will remain unlocked. So jump over to like Blackfell, Greywater, Tallgrass Inn, all these different places like this, and go ahead and grab these blueprints and stuff out of all these and just run through these and double check, make sure you got everything. You know, it doesn't hurt to take a couple extra seconds just to be thorough. Make sure you're not leaving some stuff behind that you could have unlocked and save yourself some hassle in the future. The other thing I'm going to recommend doing before you go is go ahead and run your weeklies, such as the moving house weekly event. Do your Cortex purification, I would even recommend, even if you got to wait a day or two to get that done. Get those weeklies done, get all that extra little bit of currency and stuff before you move over, because once you move over, of course, you're going to be level 1 again, and these events and these weeklies and stuff are not going to be available to you for another several weeks. So go ahead and get that stuff done now. The next thing I'm going to recommend is make sure you get the Starchrom Crates out of the seasonal shop. A lot of people may not even know this existed. Come into your seasonal goals, click on the shops in the corner, and there is a section down here called the Starchrom Exchange. Go ahead and grab these all out of the shop. They cost energy links. They cost quite a bit of energy links. But make sure you grab these before you transfer, because these are only available at the end of the season. And they don't make any mention of this unlocking or this becoming a thing. So unless you're just kind of running through the menus and paying attention to what's in them, you may not even know that these existed, much less that they just unlocked before you left. And they're each worth 500 Starchrom. So they're a nice little chunk of Starchrom. Don't leave that laying behind. You know, bring that with you over to the new server. You're going to need it. The next thing I'm going to recommend is finish up all your seasonal goals for your Starchrom. Again, this should be perhaps fairly obvious, but we'll go ahead and mention it anyway. Go ahead and get these wrapped up. Make sure you go through here, Make sure you've got 3 stars on everything. A lot of these are pretty easy to do, and you're going to get a lot of Starchrom out of completing them. Don't leave this Starchrom laying on the table. This currency really is limited every season how much you can get. So if you don't get it now and you just leave it on the table, you're really only kind of hurting yourself, right? So go ahead and grab these and make sure you get as many of these done as you can. You don't necessarily have to super power game it to get every single Mitsuko mark if you don't want to, but make sure you're at least getting these 3 out of 3 stars and getting this free Starchrom and these little things like this, like the avatar frames and stuff like that. You know, we don't know if these are ever going to return in these exact same form. You know, you may never be able to get these again the same way. So go ahead and grab this stuff before you move off. Even if it takes you a day or 2 longer to get these done, I think it's worth doing before you leave. So make sure you got all that stuff wrapped up, get all your free Starchrom. As I mentioned earlier, I think it's totally worth maybe even waiting a day or 2 to make sure you do your weekly Cortex defense. I would count this not only for this wipe, but any future wipes, because doing a level 3 defense is going to get you 4,000 Starchrom, which is a lot. That's well on your way to a key piece, another gun, a piece of, you know, gear from a set that you want to have. Like, leaving 4,000 Starchrom behind and not doing that weekly before you transfer, that's leaving a lot of currency on the table. So I would recommend even waiting a day or 2 to make sure you get this done, especially if you're already stuck and you're waiting on your server anyway. Like, go ahead and do it. Make sure you get that free Starchrom. Don't leave that behind. Another really big tip that I would consider is go ahead and craft you a drill and a chainsaw before you transfer over. Especially if you've got a special drill or a special chainsaw, such as I have here, the solar drill, where you can get more for gold and silver ore, and you have the solar drill that automatically recharges itself in the sun. Go ahead and craft those before you move over. I have confirmed that the logging chainsaw and the advanced logging chainsaw, they do cost a different amount. The advanced logging chainsaw does cost a little bit more, so that's something else to like keep in mind. Same thing with the electric and the advanced electric. If you don't necessarily want to spend the extra currency on getting the advanced version, which I think is not strictly necessary, but you know, it's kind of up to you. Maybe just craft the regular version and not the advanced version, or just transfer, or you know, craft both. That way you have both available in case you want to make that decision later on. But go ahead and craft fresh ones of these, because this is going to help you out a lot, right? Like, you don't really need a pickaxe early in the game if you've already got a drill and you've already got a chainsaw, right? Like, this is going to speed up your gathering rate significantly, save you a lot of time in the early game. In particular, wood is always kind of annoying early on because you need so much wood, you need so much coal, and you're constantly processing. It never feels like you can get enough. And then you finally unlock chainsaw, and all of a sudden, bam, you're rolling in it. You got plenty of resources, right? Go ahead and grab this. You know, maybe even you could consider doing the power leveling method that we made a video on the channel to help you boost up your levels early on using your chainsaw. That could help you out as well. That's another strategy that becomes available by going ahead and crafting this now and transferring it over. So save yourself some trouble and some heartache, and craft yourself some gathering tools, since that's where you're going to spend a lot of your time doing in the early game. Another thing I'm really going to recommend as well is get the resources you can get out of your Warband shop before you move, especially the controllers. Now, I already left my Warband, so you don't see it here because I had to resign from my Warband in order to transfer as I was the leader. But go ahead and grab the stuff out of your Warband shop. And if you're not currently in a Warband, or you never joined one, try to find an open Warband, jump in there, make your donation, buy those couple of controllers, and then dip right back out. You know, don't leave free resources on the table. You can get yourself a couple of free resources, couple of controllers right away, and it will help you out significantly with just that little bit of extra. And transferring the controllers is a pretty reasonable cost. So this next one is perhaps one of the most important tips that we're going to include on this list. And I really want to emphasize this one a lot. So we already know that these mods that you farmed on the current server do transfer. They do transfer over with you, and they don't cost anything to transfer. They're just available. So this is very good. This is very good. This saves you, this makes a lot of the time you spent farming on your previous server still valid and useful. But there are a couple of things to note when it comes to this, and you should know. The first thing being, while they do transfer at no cost, farming these mods before you transfer is a very good idea. Even at this point, even as the servers are already available, you have some time before this server that you're currently on closes down. And it's worth considering that you will not have access to pro mode again on the new server for at least 4 weeks. So a full month before you'll be able to farm these mods again. So rushing over to the new server and waiting 4 weeks until you can actually start progressing in your in-game goals may not necessarily be worth it. So it's something to consider. You may want to wait a couple of days and get a little bit of extra farming in, maybe even at least 1 day, right? And the other thing we got to talk about is the new system they just added, which is mod conversion. There's something I discovered here that was not immediately obvious that is a huge game changer when it comes to your plans to transfer, I think. So we made a video on what mod conversion is and how it works already on the channel. Go find that video if you're not sure how mod conversion works. You're absolutely going to want to understand this system. The thing you need to note, though, about the transferring and what we misunderstood, or perhaps we were too optimistic about, is the fact that your status on mod conversion is not going to transfer with you. So I'm not going to go into all the details of what mod conversion is, but let me explain this point. When you want to do mod conversion to craft new mods, you have to have acquired at least three of a particular mod in order to unlock it. So unless you have 3, as you can see here, you cannot craft it at all. It says you must have acquired 3. When you can craft it, it opens up just like this, and you can autofill and you can do whatever you want to do to craft. What we found out, however, is when you move over to the new server, this does not transfer with you. All of the mods are locked again, which means you will not, I repeat, will not be able to do mod conversion on your new server until you unlock all these mods again, which means at least 4 weeks until pro mode is available until you can actually do mod conversions. So if you have mods that you want to use and you want to convert them over, do it before you transfer, because you will not be able to do it on the new server until you farm a bunch of these mods again. Not to mention the fact that it's fairly expensive in terms of energy links. Like, see here, in order to craft this one, it's going to cost me 20,000 energy links. That's a lot of energy links, especially on a new server. You're not going to have very many energy links for quite a while. So use up your energy links and your currency now before you transfer, because not only are you going to probably be priced out of doing mod conversion, you're going to be locked out of doing mod conversion when you get there. Same thing goes for upgrading your mods. The cost is, not astronomical, but it does build up fairly quickly on the cost of upgrading mods as well. It's 1,000 at the first level. We'll go ahead and show it here. 2,000 at the next level. 4,000 at this level, right? Like, the cost is going up quite quickly. Now, this currency, the armor mod parts and the weapon mod parts, these will transfer with you. So you don't have to worry about necessarily losing these. These come over free. So if you're not going to do a bunch of mod conversion right now, and you have a bunch of mods laying around, you could consider breaking them down, but maybe hold on to them if you have plenty of these. That way you can do some mod conversion in the future, and you already have some mods on standby that you can feed in, or do it before you transfer. Because, like I say, if you don't do it now, it's going to be another 4 or 5 weeks before you can do it again. So I want to really want to emphasize this point, because this could save you a lot of farming and set you up way better for the next wipe if you do this before you move over. Another thing that's worth farming for before you transfer to save yourself some potential hassle later on is getting your calibration blueprint that you want for your main gun. Getting calibration blueprints depending on your luck and your RNG, can be a huge hassle. Sometimes in my case, I sometimes never got the calibration that I actually needed for the gun that I wanted it for. I ended up having to trade or ask another player if they had extras. And luckily on my server, people were pretty generous and willing to help each other out, so I was able to get those. But if you're on a less active server, or a less friendly community, or your luck is particularly bad, you just may not be able to get the calibration that you need in a reasonable amount of time. You may end up waiting days, if not weeks, farming, trying to get your build online and to get the calibration that you need. So if you have all the resources already available to you on your old server, go ahead and do some farming runs and see if you can't grab the calibration you need. That way you can bring it over to the new server. Now, of course, don't use this before you get to tier 5. Don't just waste the calibration on a low level weapon, because once you dismantle it, you're not going to get your calibration back. So do not waste this calibration. Hold on to it until you're ready to use it on your tier 5 in-game weapon. But the cost of moving it over is not too bad, and it will definitely be worth it. And this is another one of those instances where I think even staying behind on your old server for another day or two and farming this up probably is worth it for the amount of gain versus the amount of loss of being a couple of days behind on the new server. So if you don't already have a calibration, consider farming it, get it, transfer it over to your new server. Kind of going hand in hand with some of the other stuff we said earlier, energy links become sand and they're not kept on your new server. So feel free to use up those energy links on things. Do your mod conversions, buy stuff from the shops, upgrade your mods, buy all the Starchrom crates. Like, use up your energy links, because it's just going to turn into sand and it's not going to come over with you. So you're just going to lose it anyway, unless you really want to do a bunch of stuff in Eternal Land, in which case, maybe the sand is worth it to you. But I think there are a ton of other ways to get sand, whereas there's not a whole lot of other ways to get all this stuff you could be buying and you could be utilizing those energy links with now. So go ahead and spin those. Don't hold on to them. Just get rid of them. They're not super useful on the new server, right? They can't go with you, so use them now. So this next one is also very important. I think this is the next most important one after the mod thing, maybe even more important than the mod thing. Get everything you want off the wish machine before you transfer, as much as obviously you have currency to acquire. Let me show you what I mean, right? So like these key pieces, right? Like the explosive front top blueprint. I can only buy this once on the server. As you can see here, it's grayed out. I can't buy it again. But when you transfer over to the new server, these are going to be available again, which means you're going to be able to get copies, and you're going to be able to start stacking your blueprints to upgrade them in order to make them even better. So don't sleep on this. This is your only between seasons opportunity to acquire copies of these again. So if there's a key piece of armor you're thinking you might do a build for later and you haven't bought it yet, try very hard to buy it before you transfer. Same thing with the actual gacha version of all these, right? Come in here and acquire your gacha rolls and try to max these out if there's an item in there that you particularly want. Like if you think you're going to want the boom boom, as I did, my first build was a burn boom boom build. Go ahead and acquire these fragments now, because when it resets, you'll be able to get them again. And this is a once opportunity in order to get these fragments, because there's really no other way to get these other than through the wish machine. So if you just transfer off without spending this currency, without unlocking these goals, you're just leaving blueprints and power and DPS on the table that you could be bringing with you and will help you out significantly in the future. So go ahead and grab these before you leave. It's going to help you out a bunch. Going off of this same note, tip 13 goes hand in hand with this, which is to make sure you complete your settlement mystic crates for at least the purple sets before you leave. acquire all those, because not only are those good for just unlocking the sets if you want to unlock them, but they're also blueprint fragments that you can then use to, again, power up the blueprints that you actually want to use for your build. So run around and you don't even have to do the whole settlement. Just get the mystic crate, you know, unlock your mystic crates and get your fragments. It's worth noting, I didn't follow this logic because I didn't really think about it at the time, but it's also worth noting that, like, with these purple gear sets like this, you don't necessarily have to unlock them just because you have the fragments. Like, it will highlight in yellow and be like, hey, you can unlock this, but you don't have to unlock it if you don't want to. So if you never intend to use say power surge or shrapnel or something like that, you don't even have to spin these fragments to even unlock them. You can just hold on to them and use them to upgrade a legendary piece or a different set that you actually intend to use. But if you've already unlocked them, that's still fine, but make sure you acquire all these fragments and you don't just leave them behind on the server, because that's just more XP you can use to level up your fragments or unlock stuff, and you can move forward. You're only going to get this opportunity when a new season arrives. So if you miss this now, it's gone forever. You're never going to be able to do this again. Like, it's already going to be too late. You could ignore doing this on the blues because the blues aren't worth that much XP. But if you want to be a super min-maxer and you want to get every single little bit of XP you can possibly get, especially if you're doing like PvP or something like that, where that extra damage could be a huge difference between getting a kill and not necessarily getting a kill, go ahead and farm the blues as well and make sure you got all the blue fragments along with your purples. But at least do the purples, like, at least do the high level stuff in the later zones and get all the purple fragments, and don't leave those behind before you transfer. Next thing I'm going to recommend is go ahead and unlock all the weapon accessories around the map if you can. Now, you could do this on the new server, surely. You don't necessarily have to do it now, but for stuff like the legendary mods, you're not going to be able to do that until you're like in your level 40s and stuff like that again, right? Like, you're going to have to be fairly high level. So it may be a few weeks before you're able to go and get these on the new server, but on your old server, you're probably already level 50, right? So you could just take an hour out and do this now and unlock these and already have them to slot into your tier 1 weapons as soon as you get on the new server, and give yourself this extra stat boost right away. You know, why wait? Go ahead and do it. Take a little time out, take a day or two to wrap these things up and make yourself more prepared, not only for the next server, but every future server after this one. You know, go ahead and do this stuff now. We've got videos on the channel on the location of all these different weapon accessories. You could pull it all up in a playlist and just run through them on your other monitor. Take you no time at all. Get them all, you know, just go ahead and get it done. I highly recommend it. One thing worth noting, and I think a lot of people were kind of curious about when it comes to, you know, transferring stuff over, was how expensive is it going to be to transfer over your materials? You know, your ingots, your raw materials, your food, your seeds, all these different things like that. I have been told that there's already a Reddit post that has been made, probably a spreadsheet that has all the cost of everything already in it, because, you know, there's always somebody out there who's willing to put in all that extra legwork for you. But some high points and general things I can say right off the bat from my own investigation is that most of the materials are just too expensive to bring over for the worth of the item and how much effort it takes to get it versus the limited amount of currency you have to spend to transfer items over. It's just not worth it on most of the raw materials and things like cooked food and drinks and all that kind of stuff. It just costs too much. You would rather bring over a calibration or some Stardust or something like that that is relatively difficult and somewhat finite to acquire, versus stuff that you just have to set up a farm and cook it, you know, or something like that. A note on this though is that if you do want to bring some materials over, such as a little bit of steel to craft like a bench a little bit earlier, or a stove or something like that, you could consider doing this, but I would recommend bringing it over in its raw form and not ingot, like not already processed, because the ingots are more expensive than the raw material. So if you can bring the raw material over and just smelt it down, takes you a tiny bit longer, but saves you that much more resources. So something to definitely consider if you're thinking, as I'm getting ready to transfer over, I'm going to smelt down all my materials into bars and then transfer over the bars. It's too expensive. It's just not worth it. So pump the brakes on that. Bring over some raw material instead, if indeed you want to do that. It'll just save you a little bit of time. I don't think it's necessary, but you know, it's something worth noting. Something that is worth transferring, however, and does cost a reasonable amount, is your controllers. A lot of people were thinking controllers were going to be use it or lose it, and they were running around frantically trying to run dungeons, frantically trying to use up all their controllers, thinking they were going to go away. This is not the case. You can transfer over your controllers, and the cost of doing so is not bad. And this goes hand in hand with the tip we had earlier about going into your Warband shop and buying the controllers and stuff out of there. You can buy them out of the Planula shop as well. You know, go ahead and grab these extra controllers, because the cost of bringing them over is not too bad. And you don't need to, you know, quickly use them all up and then waste controllers on resources you didn't really want or you didn't really need, just to use them. Like, you can move those over. All right, another great tip is save your gear loadouts before you go. Some people, I think, don't even know that the gear loadout section exists to be able to save. Come over to your gear screen, and right down here in the bottom you'll see save. It's H, or you can click it and it will bring up a list of presets that you can save. You can then click here, hit R, and it will create a preset based on the one you currently have. Then you can rename it whatever, and it will save your guns, the mods that are in your guns, your melee weapons included, all your gear, the mods that are in the gear, and also your cradle setup. So go ahead and save that before you transfer over, especially if you've never made a preset before. That way, even though you won't have like your tier 5 gun and everything, you can go ahead and slot in and see what mods you had, and it'll automatically kind of like equip these for you, and it'll save you a lot of hassle and a lot of time having to reset everything up. Not to mention, it's just a good way to like quick swap between builds if you weren't already aware of it, right? You just hit F, and I've transferred over into my Desert Eagle loadout with the Lone Wolf set instead of the Shelterer set. So you can just quick swap between stuff very easily if you didn't already know this existed. But these do transfer with you, so you will have these loadouts when you move over. Same thing with your housing blueprint. They said in the patch notes they were going to automatically save your housing blueprint, but just in case for some reason that doesn't work, make sure you come over here, add your blueprint, and save it. That way you can transfer over and you can keep your base set up as well when you move over to your new server. Go ahead and do that before you move. Something else you could consider when it comes to the cost of moving all your stuff over is you could consider scrapping all your gear and getting all your Stardust back and then moving it over, because the cost of transferring over like your tier 5 gun or whatever is really just too expensive to be worth it. So this is something else to consider. The cost of moving Stardust over is also very expensive, probably more expensive than it's worth. But this is a better alternative than trying to transfer over the gear, which is just, I think, prohibitively expensive for how useful it is. Hopefully they'll even consider reducing this a little bit, either the cost of Stardust or the cost of transferring. But as it stands right now, I think it's a little too, it's just a little too expensive, you know? So it's something to consider, like breaking down all your gear into its base materials, and then considering whether or not you want to move some of those base materials over rather than the gear itself, right? So just something to consider. I personally don't recommend it, but I put it on here anyway, just so you're aware, like, hey, because if you're like me, I thought coming into the new season, transferring over like your tier 5 weapon was going to be relatively, you know, cost efficient, you know, like it was going to be worthwhile. I now don't think it really is. So just a heads up, something to consider. Maybe consider breaking all that stuff down into Stardust. small little side tip here as well is that there is a new event going on for, I think it was 3 million downloads, where they're going to give you some free currencies and stuff like that. Don't claim this before you come over to your new server. Otherwise, you're just going to leave those resources behind, right? Or have to pay the cost to transfer them. So hold on to that claim. Do it on your new server where it's actually going to do you the most good, and take your time on that one. Don't jump the gun too quickly if you haven't already. So the last little tip here I'm going to try and leave you with is to keep in mind that you don't have to do all your transferring up front. This currency cap that you're given on transferring goods over, you can use it at any time. So transfer over the stuff that you need, such as your chainsaw and your drill and things like that that you want to use right away. But for stuff like weapon specializations, or maybe some materials or some controllers or Stardust or things like that, if you don't need it now, don't go ahead and spend the points. Wait on it. Let that currency kind of sit so you can wait and see what you might need. Maybe you decide halfway through the season, the build you were using last wipe, maybe you were a shrapnel build. Maybe you don't want to go shrapnel again. Maybe you're like, you know what? I think I'm gonna try out Frost Vortex, right? But you already transferred your calibration over and spent all those points, even though you're not even to tier 5 yet where you're going to use it. Well, now you're not going to be able to get that currency back because you already spent it. So just hold off on transferring things you don't need right now. Just transfer the stuff that you actually need and give yourself a little bit of time to decide what all else you want to bring over. Be selective with using that currency, because you're going to be able to use it later on. So don't feel like you got to cap it out and you got to use it or lose it at this point. You can transfer at any time. And then the last little bonus tip I'm going to try and bring you guys with, a little hidden extra tip here, is actually on the festering gel. I think this is probably one of the most useful deviants in the entire game. And it's also one of the earliest deviants you get in the entire game. And I find a lot of people don't realize how strong the festering gel actually is. Festering gel, when you use it, will heal up your HP and will also heal up your sanity. And it does this for free. You just have to carry it around with you. And if you go ahead and do what I'm going to recommend, which is to farm the hard mode of the boss in order to get a better version of the festering gel, bring it with you to the new server, especially if you're going to be on the hard mode server where sanity hits and stuff are going to be that much higher, and they're going to increase the difficulty of the survival and the mobs that you're fighting, because it's going to save you a lot of medical resources, not having to gulp down sanity gummies to get your sanity back, not having to use activators nonstop to get your health back up. This thing helps a ton. Not to mention, paired with the cradle upgrade to increase your damage in boss fights and stuff like that, you can just pop this thing down on the ground, stand behind it, get healed, get a damage bonus, all that kind of stuff, and it costs relatively nothing. Most of the combat deviants, I think, are pretty mid in the game. Sometimes they do decent damage, and if you're using a very specific build like Frost Vortex, where the polar jelly or something like that helps you out significantly, or if you really want to run like Mr. Wish in order to get like marking or something like that, there may be some specific scenarios where you want to use a more offensively minded deviant rather than the festering gel. But outside of those few sort of like specific examples, I think festering gel is the way to go. Like it is a very good one. And if you go ahead and farm it a little bit before you transfer over so you can bring a better one with you, it will just heal and activate that much faster, right? So you get a little bit of an upgrade. I was only able to get a 3-3 one. I wish I had gotten a little bit of stronger one, but like we were getting terrible drop luck with it. And if you've taken some damage or you've taken some sanity hits and you want to quickly heal it up, all you really got to do is hit E and bring out the flawless fortification, so you can just hold it in your hand. You don't even have to deploy it. You just hold it and then just put it back in your cradle when you're full life, and it'll just start charging up once again. It's a very, very easy, quick way to save yourself a lot of resources, and especially to get your sanity back. You know, if you're out there venturing around, your sanity's taking quite a big a hit, pop it out, fill your sanity back up, put it back, boom, bang, you're right back into the heat of battle, and you didn't even have to use a resource in order to do it. You know, some of these other combat ones are okay, but they're very hit or miss, very inconsistent. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not. Most of the time I find myself just using the gel just to save myself that hassle and to keep me back in the fight that much quicker. And I think on hard mode, it's going to be that much more useful to you. And I don't see very many people using the gel at all. I find that a lot of people think, oh, it's just the first one, it's not that good, and they just move on. They're more interested in something that seems like it's going to do some damage. And I don't know, the combat deviants for me are very mid. You know, a lot of them, they don't do much. You know, they're very inconsistent. The gel, however, always does its job, always heals you, always gives you sanity, and has a very low cooldown. So that's my little hidden extra tip for you guys to consider before you transfer. Farm that hard mode a little bit and grab you an upgraded gel and bring it with you. So one last little thing I want to mention here in the video. I was actually just wrapping it up, and then a friend of mine discovered something that is really odd. I'm really kind of confused on what they were thinking with this, and we'll kind of talk about it here real quick. So when you transfer over materials to your new server, especially if it's something heavy like metal, for whatever reason they've decided to lock it for like 6 days, which means apparently you can't do anything with it. I don't know if this is a bug or whether this is, you know, intentional for some reason, but I will show you the screenshot here. I'll bring the screenshot in. Sorry, this looks kind of weird. As you can see here, it says tin ore unlinking in 5 days, 23 hours, 40 minutes. So apparently what this means, according to my friend who's experimenting with this right now, you cannot get rid of this material other than to craft with it. You can't deposit it in a box, and you can't even discard it. Like, you can't even delete it. It's just stuck in your inventory until you actually use it for something. So if you transfer over like a ton of ore and you don't have the capability, or you don't intend to process it right away, all of a sudden you're now carrying this ore and there's nowhere you can put it. You just have to hold on to it. And if it's putting you over the weight limit, well, you're just screwed. Hopefully they're going to change that, because I don't think they thought that through too clearly. Why you wouldn't be able to even put it in your own box or even delete it is incredibly odd. So something to consider as we end out the video here. Don't transfer over a bunch of raw material that you don't intend to immediately process, because you may get stuck with it until they fix it. Hopefully they fix this pretty quickly. All right, so hopefully those tips and tricks helped you guys out. If they did, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. That way you can support the content we do around here. We hope to do many more videos on Once Human. I've been really enjoying it. We're also going to be checking out many other games on the channel. So if you would like to get more content and you like what we do, please drop us a subscribe and a like on the video, so we know what you like. And if any of these tips or tricks in particular helped you out, please let us know down in the comments. Or if I left anything out, if there's a tip or a trick you think the community needs to know about, feel free to drop it in the comments as well. I will be monitoring the comments and trying to respond if you guys have any questions, or highlight any tips that you guys share that I think are worth getting out there in the community that I may have missed. And maybe we'll even do an updated video if we get a good amount of them, or if there's something important we missed in this one. I appreciate all your guys' positive and negative feedback. I try to read every single comment and pay attention to everything you guys say so we can do better videos in the future. Hopefully you guys are enjoying Once Human as much as I am, and I hope to see you guys on the hard mode servers out there. If you end up on the same server as me and you're a fan of the channel, feel free to say hello, add me as a friend. We'll have a warband up. You can join our warband and come hang out with us. Anything you guys would like to do. We will also be doing some pop-up streams on Twitch and YouTube, most likely, of Once Human. So we'll be, showing the game off as well. You guys are welcome to join us there. And as always, happy hunting out there. Catch you in the next one.